time now for Media Week. James Manning, editor and publisher of Media Week, is here to take us through all of those stories that we've been watching in the media space. And first, also joining us in the studio, Vijay, Solanki, CEO of IAB. Gentlemen, great to have you in studio with us. James Manning, of course, Happy New Year to you, back with us. So let's start with, I guess, perhaps one of the big stories, Vijay, that we've been looking to, and that is Facebook, really looking to revisit its news feed, looking to revisit its algorithm change. Give us the lowdown, and also how you see the flow through for Facebook being.
Yeah, look, so essentially Facebook have changed their algorithm, and that means there's a greater focus placed on the consumer. So you're more likely to see content from your friends as opposed to other sources. Some have described it as Facebook going back to their roots.
Yeah. And that's one of the challenges they've faced through this whole curve of going from just a college sort of bulletin board for a few friends to sort of these massive global audiences, is how they deal with that and the responsibility that comes with it. Is that right, Vijay?
Yeah, we've got to remember that, yeah, they're a company that have grown incredibly fast, and that obviously brings with it certain responsibilities.
And built around those big audiences, of course, have been big businesses themselves. What is going to be the impact? And I guess we're asking specifically about Australia, where you've got members who, you know, a lot of them really depend on audiences that flow through from Facebook. What's going to be the kickback to them, do you think?
Well, I think actually it's a little bit too early to say, because these changes have only happened a couple of weeks ago. But my understanding is that these changes mean that content that's engaged with is more likely to be seen. So if you and I are friends on Facebook and you happen to like an article in the Sydney Morning Herald, I'm more likely to see it. If you were commenting on that article, then I'm more likely to see it. But I think at the same time, it's worth recognising that here in Australia, one, changes in products and things like algorithms from Facebook, it's nothing new. They've happened in the past, they'll happen in the future. We often say to our members that you need to be agile and you need to be able to respond, and they're all changing their products all the time. The smart premium publishers, of which there are many within our organisation, have folk in their teams that are really good at adjusting and modifying their content. So that's one point. And I think the other significant point is that they're not just relying on one channel. You know, everyone and the good ones are able to create quality content for different channels. So some of their own channels, digital channels, other analogue channels. So the good publishers, I think, are well prepped. Time will tell, because it's still very early.
To James's point, when it comes to advertisers, I mean, this isn't an issue that we're just seeing when it comes to Facebook. Google, of course, oversees making several changes, and ad blocking is part of that. Yes.
Yeah, so it's probably worth going back a step or two. About a year ago in the US, there was a global initiative that was kicked off that involves Google and Facebook and some advertisers like Procter & Gamble and Unilever and other publishers like News Corp. And this initiative was called Coalition for Better Ads. It kind of does what it says on the tin. It's about making the best ad formats. So it commissioned a bunch of research, including some here in Australia, to identify the best formats. And what Google are doing with their updated version of Chrome is looking at some of the outcomes of that research and building it into Chrome. Now, the really important point is that's been rolled out, but not here in Australia just yet. What we've done at the IAB is that we've got a working group of advertisers and agencies and publishers and managing that for Australia. So we think we'll have that in pretty good check in terms of how that rolls out here.
Both Google and Facebook have taken a bit of a hammering this past year, particularly from traditional publishers who claim they're stealing their audience, stealing their revenues. Do we think this sort of response is genuine from both Facebook and Google? They really want to do something different, or is it just commercial decisions driving the initiative?
Look, I think you need to speak to Google and Facebook to get those answers. I think the important thing is that the digital ecosystem here in Australia is flourishing. We had a major milestone towards the end of last year where over 50% of all advertising in Australia is coming from digital, and particularly areas like mobile and video are in growth. So they're absolutely two areas to watch, and if you're a marketer or an advertiser, you should be investing in those two spaces, and video will absolutely continue to grow. I think the other thing to point out is that, and we'll have more detail on this in the next couple of weeks or so when our data comes out, is that online classified in Australia are showing some incredible growth as well. So there are some absolute Australian success stories in all of this ecosystem growth.
You point there at digital advertising revenue and that strength that is coming through. Are there specific sectors that you're seeing, particular strength in?
Yeah, typically the three that come to mind are automotive, finance, retail, FMCG not far behind. So those tend to be the ones where there's been significant shift of dollars into using digital.
There has been a little bit of slowing of the percentage growth in digital. Do you think, I know you haven't finished counting yet, but do you think we will see that?
Yeah, look, I think that it's now the significant part of the market, so there will be an element of maturity. I think what you are seeing is a growth in diversity. So I talk about video and mobile, but let's not forget things like audio. We're going to see an explosion in podcasting and audio streaming, so we'll start to see other formats come into play as well in 2018.
And Vijay, you're looking at GDPR, which I had to do a search. That's the General Data Protection Regulation coming through, and the changes that could mean for the sector as well. I mean, just firstly, again, for those of us like me who did have to do a search for that, I mean, what does it represent within the space?
So GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, apologies for more acronyms, is something that's coming out from the EU later this year in May. And about a year ago, we thought, well, is this really going to impact us in Australia? But if you're a company that is doing business in Europe, yes. If you're a company that is part of a global company, then your European counterparts will be looking at it. And then if you're a company that has partners in Europe, it will have an impact. So my advice there is this will have an impact on Australian companies, including media companies, because media companies more and more using data and consumer data, so it's important that everyone takes a closer look at the laws around data consent and data privacy that will be coming through this year.
Could that have I know it won't have an impact here yet, but if we follow what happens in Europe, is that because one of the big sells of digital is the data that they can provide, right, to advertisers. Is that going to impact that a little bit and maybe flow through to revenues?
In a positive way. I think it's simply the fact that you often hear this expression, data is the new gold. And many announcements over the summer, again, publishers teaming up with each other to exchange data. Data is going to be really, really important. This legislation in Europe is just about having the right checks and balances around how you use that data.
So be more responsible with it.
Absolutely that.
Of course. Now, one of the things also that we're looking to cover today, Patrick Delane making the move to run Foxtel. I'm keen to get your take in terms of how this impacts some of those free-to-air channels and some of the sports rights negotiations that we see very prevalent in the market.
Yeah, I mean, Foxtel's been at the crossroads for a little while. The growth of Netflix globally, the growth of Stan here in Australia, offering customers, added content to what they get for free on their broadcast TV at a very low cost. If you get the full package of Foxtel, you're paying over $100. You get full package of Stan and Netflix, you're getting changed from $20 a month, So it's a big difference for somebody doing their budget. And sports rights are the key to that. I mean, Fox Sports, they're merging with Foxtel. That's the big driver for Foxtel, is sports rights. Will continue to be. They don't have much on in the summer, so you can expect they'll be really sharpening their pencils now at Foxtel. You look at the history of companies Rupert Murdoch's invested in, controlled, they've often outlaid big dollars at what at the time seemed over the odds. You think back to Sky, what they did with football. You think to the NFL, 25 years ago this year, a massive deal for NFL that really put Fox in the map in the US. Just this week, on the eve of the Super Bowl, they've done another deal for Thursday night football in the US, what they did last year in India with IPL rights. You know, don't be surprised to see them really wanting to get in amongst the summer sport, which would be cricket, of course. And look, it's not going to be all about sport, but then you build your business around those key sports rights, and I think we'll see some action there.
Yeah, of course. Well, James, with you back on deck, we want to take a look at some of the ratings for week 4 for free to air. Taking a peek at that, you can see there the Australian Open, the women's final, 7 News Sunday 7, 9 News Sunday 9, Australia versus England, as you mentioned. The cricket and the news coming through. Meanwhile, the week 4 sub TV, the top 5, we've got Real Housewives of Melbourne, Guardians of the Galaxy, Great Australian Bake Off, Britannia and Avatar.
Yeah, a couple of movies there, Natalie, and one of the problems here is, look, there's no Fox Sports in that top 5. You know, they just can't get a grip on big audiences. I had a quick look through the top 50 this week. There's only one entry for Fox Sports, and that's for an A-League game. They just would love to get a summer sport to keep a sort of offer to the customer to keep them subscribed all year round. They've got a good deal in the winter with the 2 football codes, and they really would like to get a handle on the summer too.
Of course, James Manning, Media Week, great to have you back on deck with us. And of course, Vijay, great to have you with us this afternoon as well. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Well, that's it for Media Week. After the break, we'll be talking blockchain and check back in on the markets. Don't go away.